Right, friends, we're on the top of the hour. It's 2 o'clock on the 21st of June. And happy belated Father's Day to all our mothers there. Uh, and it's an exciting time to be part of history and to not only have a virtual trade fair designed in Africa and launched in Africa, but also to have a fantastic panel of speakers we are starting to meet and who are coming from different industries. And if you've missed any of the previous sessions, please go to our link that's provided in the chat box. And also before you leave, just download the chat box so you have all the contact details. And also go and browse our trade fair, go to our networking lounge, link up with our WhatsApp group so we can inform you of any forthcoming events. But today we are very excited to have one of our I always want to say old because things happen so fast in this day and age. Peter, I'm not sure how long you've been part of the chamber, but it already feels like a couple of years.
Yes.
Peter can tell us right just now, and he's also one of our premier members. And Peter has got an interesting history. He will tell you more about it, but he's a very clever man. He makes us mortals, sometimes I use the analogy, I feel like a grade one in the presence of a professor when you get to the brains of some of the people there. But Peter has got a fantastic heart and he'll tell you his story, but right now he's involved with very exciting stuff in the farming industry. And I know his talk is amongst others farming by faith, but he's also humble enough to share with you how there was a joke of the farmer who said, how did you make your million? He said, I started with 15. So that's typical for farming. So Peter, I think without any further ado, take us through your talk.
Yeah, thank you very, very much, Jasper. Very excited to just share a little bit of the story with people. And I think a great story is often what people can relate to. Maybe struggles that one faces, maybe it's a key part of identification. And hopefully some of the successes and failures that I have talked through, not just in terms of what I'm currently doing, but going back to how I started, can maybe help people ask questions about their own path and learn from that and come out with maybe some new ideas. And I think that's really the case. I think for a lot of people, they kind of go, well, how did you get into farming? You know, how did you actually get involved in that industry? And I think it's a case of culmination of many events in your life where then you take a strategic decision, and maybe it's not, it's a message of hope that even when you find yourself stuck, you can pivot. And you can say, how do I go a new direction and do something very, very different? So the intro was, Jasper gave in the previous topic that I'm a mathematician. I come from a very analytical background, maths, studying at university. I had started my own business when I was 27. And I just want to kind of run you through just what I want to show you is this. Can you see the screen here where it says how I went from a 7-figure business to broke as a business in a global accelerator? Can you all see that?
Peter, no, you first have to share the screen.
First I have to share. Okay, so let me just, sorry about that. Let me share.
All right, now we can see.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the slide that has been put together, and I just wanted to talk about going from a 7-figure business that I created with very, very little money at the beginning, got somewhat good return on that when I sold it, lost a lot of money in the next sort of venture. But through that has learned a lot that then allows me to create a business plan and strategy that is part of a global accelerator running out of the US, which is very, very exciting. So, you know, I think that if you look, the first point that I'd like to talk about is build from scratch, how to sell a business. And really, when I'd gone to university, had studied to honors level in mathematics, got involved in the banking sector at Nedbank, and really was come from a family that we've been very frugal with our money. So I was able to not spend a lot. For example, I'd rather than buying fancy cars, I would go and I bought a 13,000 Rand skadonk, and rather used my money for other interests. And through that time, I managed to save up a bit of capital. I had traveled overseas. I'd been to Nigeria. I'd been to United States, different things that helped me along my journey, and came back 27 and had whatever funds I had. It was about 100,000, and formed a company with a very good friend of mine from church who had similar hearts and interests, and we put that together and we started a company. Now, it's maybe for some people that's a lot of money, for others that's a little bit of money, but it's really about, I think, a path of being wise with what do you invest your money in. I think a lot of people see money as wealth, and I don't necessarily agree with that philosophy. I think money is a transfer of wealth, and it's a slight difference, but it's what do you do with your money at the right time. And if you're able to build up something, then you're able to leverage it and then make a decision on that. So that was, I think, a very, very important to say, how can two 27-year-olds, not necessarily a lot of business experience, coming from very different backgrounds, from a KPMG background, myself from a banking background, forge a relationship that 7 years later allowed us to sell for around 10 million. So if you think of it, you're scaling a business from an initial investment of maybe 100,000 Rand each to something that now has a net value valued at 10 million. So I would say, as a banker, that project was a fairly successful venture. If you can take a business and after 7 years, you can value it at 10 times. I think 10, 100 times. And that's I think a biblical principle around, someone who's given something, how do they make it more? And that's, I think, important. So I don't know if there's maybe any questions at that point before I talk a lot of that, but I do want to talk about some successes and failures about that initial business enterprise. Does anyone want me to answer any questions there quickly about that?
All right, friends, if you're new to the platform, while the speaker talks, you can put some comments or questions in the chat room, and I will monitor it, and at the right time then tell the speaker what your question or comment is about. You can also, if you have a question, put up your hand, go to participants, and just click on yourself and put up your hand. But Peter, it doesn't look like anyone has any question for now, so you can carry on.
Hey.
Sorry, there's someone. Dawn.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know how to put up my hand. So anyway, what I wanted to ask, Peter, did I miss out? Did you say what business it was that you and your friend started?
Yeah, so it was a financial IT company around regulatory reporting, group performance reporting. Not any other background I had. It was more from a IT systems point of view and finance that my partner had, and then we managed to forge that. And the first initial years was really more consulting. I think that you are literally trying to just, you don't really have any strategic relationships, no one to leverage that has, high enough financial positions. So it's literally take what you get. And so it started as a consulting around some of the maths work that I had, and some of the group reporting consulting. And then eventually we ended up building a financial IT platform that we then were able to sell projects into the likes of Telkom, Grindrod, a whole lot of different blue chip companies that then enabled us to leverage that further. And we had a number of companies such as KPMG, Shanduka, PwC, all interested in acquiring our business. It was timed well in the market in the sense that there was a spot, we had created a niche, and we knew who the buyers potentially were of that niche beyond our initial startup. So we then able to, we transitioned into PwC and sold the business and had structured deals that enabled us to get an upfront payments and then milestone-based payments based on the success or performance of the business.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right,
So,
Peter.
yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah. So I think that out of that project was really, if you think of, not necessarily all of the 10 million comes to yourself, there's obviously it's how it's allocated, but you can gives you an idea of maybe my own personal financial position was relatively strong at that point. I think that you sometimes then make decisions based on saying, well, I'm sort of in this career phase of where am I? What do I need to do? What is the next big project that I need to work on? I was leading a very sort of unfulfilled space at PwC, having been successful at a small business, and now in a big corporate, I wasn't really successful. The way that it's run wasn't the correct place for me. So I used that money and purchased two properties, two farming agricultural projects, which were linked to concepts around how I could tackle a project around helping to establish a drug rehabilitation ministry, as well as a sort of a social project that then could feed the economics of making this economically viable proposition on the first set of agriculture. I'm pleased to say, I think that I've survived that very, very difficult phase of actually testing a project, being prepared to lose a lot of money. And I think that that's often a mistake that people are afraid of. They're afraid of if I lose a lot of money, then what? And you have to learn that lesson. But I think if you, a venture capitalist friend of mine actually said to me, what you actually want to do from a capital perspective is you want to pump as much capital into a project so that you can actually see if it fails or succeeds. And so I think that allowed me to get to a success mark where, although I lost cars, I lost the property back to the banks, I wouldn't say that the project was a failure. I would say that the project was a success because those learnings that I could create and really say, well, I believe I've got a very, very strong gift around understanding life, business, maths, thinking, okay, if I went wrong, where's everyone else going wrong? Because this can't be just me that's going wrong. I'm sure there's a lot of other people who feel passionate about helping society, but who are also going wrong. And that then really helped me to hone the thinking to actually say, well, because I had nothing, I lost money. I lost over 7 figures. It is a fair amount of money to lose. So how could I come up with a way to survive without money? If I were to start this again, what would be the risks that I would remove? How could I start with 0? How could I actually, if I can protect 0 and build it up, what would I do? And one of the key differences was around the thinking through to say, well, I put a lot of money in buying the assets, and then the risk of actually running the project became too much, and I ran out of capital on that. So that was almost a key strategic decision around capital deployment of fixed assets versus operational costs. And that then helped me to refine, to say, well, in the new model of how, if I'm going to help people across the board in agriculture, because it's linked to poverty, how can I make sure that we reduce capital requirements, rethink a model that enabled you can think of it like an Airbnb, Airbnb for agriculture. That's around a rental model, a rental plan for new entrants coming onto the asset. And that really did help to actually get, I did a lot of writing to various different programs and people on the internet, and I actually managed to find myself in being replied to, which was amazingly a surprise, from a global accelerator run out of New York. Now, if you write to most places, you don't get responses. No one listens. And I understand it's a global market. But for whatever reasons, they called me up in November last year and said, we'd like an interview. Wrote to me. I said, okay. A week later, I had an interview, told them about my project. I'd already built collateral around, videos of the project. I could explain where it went wrong. I could explain the huge potential in the market, especially when you look at all the funds allocated from government, all the funds allocated from private sector to address something like in agriculture. It's just that the projects are not getting kicked off properly. And when they get kicked off, there's loss of money. And so no one wants to invest in it properly, or the structure's not right. So that was, I think, a very good ability to communicate a mature idea and concept to people who were looking for visionary projects. So they didn't select the project based on my financial ability or what returns. They really they select projects for social impact. What is the impact that a project can have? And they saw that it potentially had the impact to have on South Africa, but not just South Africa, but outside of South Africa, because poverty is such a global issue. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of talk you through that, and maybe just give you share another screen here, and let's just see. Oh,
unshare first, Peter. Unshare.
Sorry. There we go. Yeah, so just so you can see the type of, just to give you a feel for the level of thought that has gone into a new business idea and a new concept. And I'm not going to take you through the detail, but this was the strategic plan that was co-created by my input and a team called Gamecock Consulting that is part of the project in the United States. Now, if I just take you to the first slide, you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people. 8 people on my project that I didn't have to pay in US dollars. So you can imagine just the fact that even I've got a team working for me, that helping me on the project was fantastic just to see that. And when they constantly would ask me for input, after I'd communicate the ideas, a week later, they came back with, okay, this is now the presentation, this is a strategy, and they asked me for input. And I literally each week had very little to say. Not that I couldn't give more input, but they had nailed the concept on the head, and had really strategically broken it down into more and more pieces that actually make sense. So what I want to do is just quickly give you just about the vision. And I think that this is where what I'm trying to do from a vision perspective is to combat the income inequality by transforming emerging South African farmers into independent, self-sustaining and prosperous agripreneurs. So it's not that I'm trying to say the vision is to become a farm or economically active. It's really around that strategy that I'm trying to address. And they really did help me take this vision and mission and break it down. And I'm just going to give you one slide just so you can understand where the project is going. So the slide says the land linking model connects landowners and agripreneurs while providing education. So really, based on, as I said, the learnings of trying to own the land myself, run projects myself, rather than do that, rather partner with landowners, rather leverage their existing infrastructure, their assets, their capital investments in their projects, and connect the market of the agripreneurs. And some key differentiating points around the thinking is that because of my background in PwC, because of my international exposure, because of for example, working at the community bank, or all of these different aspects, I have a strategic network that a lot of these players do not have. So I'm able to work with that, constantly expand that, as well as then I have the ability to work with very strong digital partners that I'm able to, because I understand technology, and able to work on projects that help better define the requirements for the technology. This then enables a solution to be created that has not necessarily been fully tested and existed. And I think that what is extremely exciting is once you can isolate your skill, where are your strengths and where are your weaknesses, you can go and try and bring people into your company and try and pay them, but invariably it takes a long time to get that going, and for them to understand what's happening and what's going on. But if you can rather focus on strong partners who can very quickly help create almost an environment that creates a win-win situation. They're not necessarily coming into what you're doing, and you're not necessarily going into what they're doing, but you can co-create a new vision for a synergy. It allows a far quicker turnaround in growing a project. So, within the chamber, and this is to the success of the relationships at the chamber, has been, being able to then work with people who have much stronger banking background than I do, much stronger relationships with landowners. And that's only because I've come into the chamber and sat there for a period of time, taken a beating sometimes, for my views. I don't mind. But I've built the relationships with people that I see have very strong skills in other areas, and I'm then able to say, okay, we've made some headway. Let's see where we can work together, and that for me is truly an exciting avenue, knowing that I can start calling on people who have very, very strong strengths in a world where I think if you don't know who has got your back, you're facing everybody. It's very, very difficult. So yeah, I think that's just a little bit about the project, the vision, where it's going, and yeah, I think I don't know if that helps you. I think that what I could just also like to say is that when you would ask me, well, how do when I went from this transition of, working in finance, understanding a bit of money, understanding my own business, then saying, well, how do I create a new solution into agriculture? I think that it's through all of those experiences that I've been able to say, well, when I looked at what went wrong in my own approach, a key area was around finance. When you run out of money, finance is a problem. And sort of saying, well, how can I think about something that removes that? Not completely. I think that's not going to happen, but can remove it quite a lot. So I was well aware that, for example, the international markets and the local markets were at a critical point for a number of years, and you've had international events occurring. And so I purposely started setting out to say, how can I make what I do far more resilient, that when a crisis comes, I'm not subject to the same problems that everybody else is facing, because I can see it coming. So I was then able to say, well, okay, I've been working on my concept on my farm and my agriculture project. And when COVID came down, you know, upon South Africa, it locked down lots and lots of people. However, with myself, I had already transitioned to a digital way of thinking, of working in international teams, you know, doing maths consulting online, you know, with the gig chamber online, various aspects, and even thinking around money, you know, has put me in a position of being unlocked. So currently, I think the banking sector and the government sectors are maybe under an administration huge challenge, because they've got a lot of financial pressure now, because it's created a financial economy that has reached its peak, and everybody is potentially now defaulting on loans or defaulting on home loans and bonds, and money is very, very short. So my financial problem of the past, so to speak, is maybe less of an issue now, and that's been very good for me. So I'm not trying to demean the challenges that people have had through this time, but I think maybe it helps you to see that if you can come up with a different strategy, and understand correlated financial risk, as an example, how do you then put in place mechanisms to prevent that from happening in your business? So I think it's a good place to stop and check if there are any questions that you want me to go back and revise.
Peter, do you have more slides, or can we stop sharing the screen? Then we can look at all the faces and see.
Yeah, I think it's a good place to stop the share there.
At the bottom,
Yeah.
there we are. All right, some of the questions that came up, and I didn't want to interrupt you, just after you shared your selling of your company at 10 million, Trevor had a question to say, what did they pay the 10 million for? What was the unique value in the company?
So I think that it's an extremely good question. If you don't know how your company is going to be valued by somebody else, not by you, you're a duck, you're sitting duck, because you don't really have an end strategy around your business. So I can't say that it was clear right at the beginning to say this is how I knew I was going to sell off the business, but some key aspects that they paid for. Let's put it like that. Firstly, they saw myself and my business partner as entrepreneurs. They didn't see us as employees. So the knowledge that we had as business owners was an important part of the negotiation, in terms of when you're taking a services-based business and you're transitioning that into the sale of a new business, and then your guaranteed employment at that point. So that enabled us to structure payment plans that, you know, included performance into the new company for PwC, as well as we had staff contracts, loyal staff contracts that we could show. We could show that we had support agreements that were in place with, you know, large corporates, not with, you know, small players that potentially can go out of business. But like we still had support contracts with Telkom. We had done numerous implementations, you know, as I mentioned, some of the companies, Grindrod, Shanduka, Telkom, MultiChoice, all of that counts in your favor. So, and then another key part of what they were buying was we had built IP. So there was the system that, from a finance point of view, you can think of it like a framework. Somewhat you leverage someone else's software, like let's say it's a R1 billion software that you would buy, but you are now strategically only focusing on the configuration of that software. So when you are able to unlock that, and you're able to then say, well, let us focus on building an extremely good brain in that system, to process the information, you leverage your business. Instead of building the big Titanic, you're just building the engine in the Titanic, but the Titanic is kind of a fee-based thing that you work with large corporates from. So that was a very important part of the guaranteed success that PwC would actually know that when they acquire our business, they are getting, devoted staff, loyal staff, good IP, good contracts, and they knew that they had a strategic network that we could leverage the business. So I think at the end of when was it, sort of 2 years of transition into the business, I mean the turnover of the unit was basically about 40 million. So they had returned, let's say a 10 million rand valuation into a business that then had got, potentially 40, and it could have been more. It's just that in a large corporate, it's very difficult to actually value, your own particular business unit contribution versus, the contribution to the global whole.
Okay, Trevor.
And just further to that, I wanted you to give that explanation so that people understand that to get this 10 million, there are different forms of valuations. Generally, corporates are buying future earnings where possible, or they're buying contracts which will generate the future earnings, or they're writing off the expenditure to goodwill factors and all of that sort of thing. So I wanted to get an understanding there. I sat in on the end of Gavin, not Gavin, Grant, chatting where he was coming from, and I know that he's lecturing there at Stellenbosch University, and I listen to you and I know everything about you. You count a lot further than my 1, 2, 3. So you count all the other numbers after that. And I wonder when the minds like this, and I mentioned Gavin, so you bring a Gavin, you bring an Ivan, you bring a Grant, you bring a Peter together, who have all of the years of experience, and you put yourselves behind projects like we're doing as the virtual trade fair. You guys can unlock this into, and I don't think it's short of billions, but very quickly. So I now want to bridge that comment of how we connect with individuals like yourself that have proven capabilities in the numbers games, and understanding the entrepreneurial drive leads to a great return on your efforts that you put into a project. And I'm going to ask you on your last slide that you closed off with, where's the money?
Where's the money?
Yeah.
In terms of that business plan.
In that little model, I saw all of that model, and I said, yes. Okay, you're a boy who understands that this is all about money coming in, or are you now a virtual philanthropist?
No, I think I still would like to help people, but it's around making sure that is richly rewarded. I think that is a good way, because I've seen that if you just help people endlessly, well, you're out of pocket and the project collapses. So it's an important, and I think that's where so I'm in a transition phase of saying, how do we then build out a much larger business plan that then can actually be fundable and bankable at very strategic levels. So with Cambridge, they've only done initial sort of thinking around projected financials, etc., based on where I was and the project. So it's small scale, but I think that within the community environment, we are now actually saying, well, how do we build out a bigger plan, and then from that one can actually attach a bigger funding to that plan, if that helps you, Trevor.
No, it doesn't help me at all. So what I'm going to say, Peter, I know that you've done it once, and I'm absolutely certain you're going to be doing it again. And I want to see Gavin wants to come on board, and we need him to come on board. But here's the comment that I want to make. I just sit here and I say, listen, I've got to help this boykie quickly, and there've got to be a couple here to actually get you where you want to be on your side, so that you can bounce back and help us get where we want to be on our side, and very quickly. So I need Jasper to be turning around and saying, if I don't bring these teams together within the next couple of days, we've missed out on billions. So Gavin.
Jasper, you want to take this one, or should I?
You take it.
Trevor, you're a couple of months behind with your comments. Already on its way. Peter, you want to show off a bit with some of the stuff we've got on the go?
You go for it.
Okay. I don't know if you remember, there was another Trevor that spoke yesterday.
Trevor Carty.
Trevor Carty. And I don't know if you noticed some of the stuff he was talking about. Well, guess what? Trevor Carty, Peter Browne, Jasper Klutter, myself, or what he was talking about. So it's happening.
All right, but I think to appreciate Trevor and to come back to Peter, I think Peter is almost our poster boy, and we brag in his absence about the kind of man you have to be, or woman you have to be, to make it in this new world and this new economy. And previous success is no indicator of future success, or no guarantee. It's a strong indicator. And like Trevor, I can concur. I know if you've done it once, you can do it again and again. But only if you also understand the rules and you put yourself out there. And I think I want to just applaud Peter here in front of everybody, because he was taken apart at some of our networking sessions. And other people who had similar opportunities, after about 20 minutes of that, I was in another meeting. After about 20 minutes of that, the person's ego was so dented that he just stood up and he said, I don't need to take this rubbish in my life, and he walked out. And he also had a fantastic idea. I think, Trevor, you'll remember Kyalami that one day. And I was just thinking to myself, what would have been the difference if that guy just sat through and got his ego in check and actually appreciate that he was surrounded by what Trevor often says, just even in this group here, we've got the making of a listed company with all the skills and all the expertise and all the networks in place. Now it's a matter of fact to get to know each other better. And Jim Collins has a book that he calls Good to Great. And in that book, Good to Great, he proves scientifically how the real great companies out there has actually nothing to do with their unique product or their unique service, or those things come and go, but with great people. And great people come with getting to know each other, having respect for the contribution that each one can bring to the table. And Peter, yeah, just from my side, it's great to work with you. And I can applaud you and see, you know, how I think the first time you started to talk there at the chamber, you were almost this shy, I'm not sure if I'm qualified to say anything. And now you are taking the world by its throat and shaking it and saying, listen to me, because I've got something to say. So congratulations on that. Folks, any question or comment that you have for Peter there? Karina commented you again on just your session there, but she then also said, where are you now in the accelerated journey? So if you want to just give.
So I think that's a very good question. That I've been through 3 months of the program. Then coming in September, October is the new semester, where then they will have more time to help me. Now, the important thing to know is I'm not part of a mass program. This is not a, we help, you know, however many people across the globe. It sounds like literally it's only been maybe about 15 projects over 5 years that they've really dedicated time. So I think they're very, very particular in the type of projects, so that they can give you the right impetus in what you're doing. So the next semester kicks off in September, October, and it revolves around better defining the legal framework, better defining the financial model, so that one can actually then say, how do we start implementing this better? And they've also given me a timeline that, you know, of things that I need to do from my side. And then the other side is, so once this year-long program has come to an end, I'm actually then part of their global alumni. Now, you can imagine this is an international university program driven out of South Carolina and New York. And I'm now in a very strong position there of prestige of a project that they would be very proud of helping to leverage into a country. So so it's not just a I'm in and out kind of scenario, I'm in.
Okay, thanks, Peter. There's another question that came in from Mortalapule. I'm curious about the drug rehab place. Is it? You mentioned you buying a farm and you put you moved into drug rehab, or were you missing?
Yeah. So it's part of a sad story, as well as I don't really know the full extent of the story. I think that it comes back down to a key mistake that I made was when I said, well, this was something that I bartered with friends. Now I'm somebody who's very social. A lot of people, I'm not, okay, this is the legal contract. This is how we're going to run things and execute it, because I'm not good at that. So it actually structurally and financially started falling apart, where, you know, I had been also appointed as chairman, and then, you know, later on they just said, no, you're not the chairman anymore. Well, I had financial liability. So that was a key mistake that I made. So the project, I had to then actually, I had to actually ask them to eventually just leave. It was a very difficult, you know, I'm trying to help people, if that makes sense, come from absolutely nothing. Now I've helped them get up and running, give them stuff, you know, literally without compensation, so to speak, in South African terms. And eventually, like, the project ground to a very difficult place, and yeah, sad. So I've lost the assets. There's not much I can do.
Well, thanks, Peter. While you post some more of your questions there, or comments in the sideline, earlier in his talk, Peter was referring to his venture capitalist friend who gave him the advice to say, throw capital at it as much as possible to see if it fails. I thought to myself, wow, I need to meet your friend, because I will certainly help him learn very fast about his capital. All right. Any other question, comment? You can just open your mic and you can start sharing there. I don't see any other mics going open. Let me just quickly check for hands here on the side. I also don't see a specific hand.
Hi, Jasper.
Yes. All right. Mpuseng?
Hi. Thank you. Thank you very much, Peter, for the lessons that I took from what you have been sharing. And I just want to make a comment on the statement you made about helping people endlessly, because I believe that is very powerful, that we need to get to a point where there's sustainability in what we are doing, that we don't encourage a handout culture. And I think, you know, in terms of connecting with you, that is something that I probably would learn quite a lot in what I am having to be doing soon, especially with youth empowerment.
If I can respond to that, I think it's extremely important from an education point of view. The reason being is people have never been exposed to capital now, and they're coming from a position where that money is earned. Money is paid as a salary, and that's probably all that they've been exposed to in a middle class or even lower class society. So they haven't been exposed to a capital project that then is put down by somebody to then, in order to make it sustainable.
Yeah.
So the very approach to money and to solving a problem is actually, it just means that the person who puts down the money for the project loses at the end of the day. And so it's a very, very capital risky perspective. And that's also where I think that we probably can go to government stats and all these other things where maybe a lot of these projects in the past have not been as successful. Yes, there might be other ones that are successful, but why have they not succeeded is a critical reason. And I think that capital is also allocated in this country in a way that is not friendly to a startup, not friendly to someone going and acquiring, to do something and then knowing that there's inherent risk, a lot of risk in the project. So those are very deep-rooted issues that have to be addressed in order to make something like this viable on a mass scale.
Okay.
Thanks, Hussein. Trevor?
Yeah, so I'm just considering, you put in a neat little team together around that. You've established these connections at the chamber. Peter, what's missing in your life at the moment? So from a business perspective and getting back to where you were and really shooting through the roof from a business project perspective, what do you think is missing right now? What's the missing link, or who is missing? What type of individual do you need around you right now?
I think that, even with the discussions that we've had within the group with Jasper and myself and Gavin and Trevor, is that, yes, we're making progress, but at the end of the day, that progress is lacking because I think it can be accelerated further. So I do believe that there's a large portion of the, let's call it the gig economy, the freelance economy, that can be leveraged to accelerate, the project to a place that it can actually become, start proving that it has a big financial viability. So that's on a personal level where I have, I've had my own capital trapped and, only been dealing with my own personal cash flow each month to actually try and accelerate that. So that's where I believe that, to make that transition to say, how do we get something very scalable on a personal note? That's where I've been trying to work with people who can maybe unlock that for me.
And do you have the answer, or you don't have the answer?
I think I've got partial answers. I think that I've got someone new that has been coming on board to the project, and also the relationship with Etienne from the Congo Cooperation. I think that I need to further those conversations. I don't think that you can have a conversation with someone and then a week later they're giving you money. I think I've learned that lesson. It doesn't happen that way. So I think it's harnessing maybe some of those two that I have, as well as then maybe looking for 2 or 3 other strategic people that can see the vision and see where it's actually running to and able to help bridge that short-term gap.
All right, and I ask these questions because I think it's so important for individuals to understand what you've got to be asking in the back of your head. And today, you don't have the luxury of, even when you set up whatever your project was. Time disappears so quickly and crisis happens so quickly. There's a guy by the name of Dr. Larry Brilliant, who is out there talking about we're now massively in the age of pandemics. So if we think that this COVID-19 is just a one-off event, big surprise. these pandemics are now going to come at a rush at us. And very quickly, we have to scale up our endeavors. Whatever we're doing, we cannot think small. We have to think big, and in terms of how to get this out at scale quickly. So I'd love to be actually sitting down with you, with someone like Ivan, turning around and saying, okay, guys, why didn't you cut us in the early days? I'm now as jealous as anything. I'm going back. I'm going to go and have my whiskeys now. I'm going to go for a sleep. Guys, I don't drink. But I think such exciting potential, and this is what it takes to be a global entrepreneur. And what we're going to do is bridge those gaps very quickly. So I've got to pat you on the back for your humility, Peter. There's not many in this forum could ever have walked in your shoes, including myself. What you've actually done, I think you can be extremely chuffed with yourself. But now make us all a shareholder in a couple of billion in the next couple of minutes. I request.
Yeah.
Thanks, Trevor. I've got a question there from a comment from Dawn.
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, having known Peter for the time I've been at the Chamber, it has been a very interesting journey. The Chamber makes one grow and think and reanalyze things, and I think Peter's done that excellently. Well done, Peter.
Thank you. Thank you all for the input. I think that maybe a way to answer to that I can around, you know, maybe just giving people on how I've come out with a solution that I think can make a big impact. I'm just going to share with you a quick picture that will give you a visual representation. Okay, so can you just see the screen there?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so you've got on the left there, you've got a gazelle, a black and white photo of a gazelle. Now, what's interesting is, you know, that through the way that I think, the way that I approach life, maths, even studying how images are digitally made, as an example, you can take a project where most people, you know, see the picture and say, well, this is now my project that I'm going to do. I'm going to create this picture. Whereas with sort of the skills and the background and the thinking that I go through, I'm able to take all the inputs and say, well, actually, I know that you can do this whole piece here, but if I can carve out the very fine detail around the edge of the image, then we can get a very clear black and white of you know, that this is a gazelle. And you can, yes, you might be able to visually see that, but now there might be other ways of actually defining a project that could better enhance the borders or the territories. And that's really like the thinking around a market. I think that if you're trying to do the same thing as everybody else, you are going to, I think, be fighting a very, very difficult battle financially. But if you're able to find the gap that everyone can see the picture and everyone can see the gazelle, but ask them maybe to draw the outline by hand, and they're going to struggle. So that would be an example that, you know, just some of the skills and the thinking around creating a business plan and a business model that would address the stick figure, so to speak, of the gazelle. So I just thought that would help you to understand how I think and how I like to work with people.
Thanks, Peter. Interesting analogy there. If you can just unshare your screen, then I want to wrap up here. We